The result of the study suggests that offering moxibustion for breech presentation 33 weeks reduced the number of breech presented at term, consequently a reduction of the number of cesarean sections. So it's definitely, even if you see that, you can see the difference. There is less breech at delivery, at term, then obviously consequently there will be less cesarean section.
And welcome everybody to this week's Maternity and Midwifery Hour. And welcome, it's series 4. I can't believe it's series 4, but it is, and session 9. And we're going to be looking at disability today and maternity care and supporting women with disabilities to get the best out of their experience. My name's Sue MacDonald and I am the curator of the Maternity and Midwifery Hour and the Maternity and Midwifery Festivals, and it's my pleasure to be the chair this evening. And tonight we're joined by two lovely people. We've got a lovely double act today, Trudy Williams and Cheryl Edwards, and welcome to both of them. Now, before we started, I was going to put them both on the spot to get a little moment of the week. So I'll give them a moment to think about one little thing, a little thing that's happened this week that might be a moment of the week. And I shall, as I never make myself have a moment of the week, I will have a moment of the week. And my moment of the week is, we've got blue tits nesting in a strange bottle on our patio. And I think the babies are coming out of their shells because the blue tits are going to and from, back and forth. They're so busy, and it's just so lovely because you can hear little tiny tweetings in this strange jar that they've chosen to have their babies in. And I have to say, I think women are much more sensible because they choose, if they're going to choose their home, they wouldn't choose a very tiny confined set space, I don't think, anyway. So that's my moment of the week. Now, Trudy or Cheryl, do you have just one little moment of the week? Doesn't have to be big.
Well, I think that the weather is the winner here. It's a moment of the week. We've had so many weeks of rain, and it was half term last week, and both Cheryl and I are mums to 3 children. So being able to get outside with the children, play games in the half term week, just at the right time, has been brilliant.
Fabulous. That's a super actually moment of the week, because this is happening to a lot of people, having a bit of sunshine. It is amazing how it does lift your spirits, isn't it? So fabulous. Thank you for finding that moment. That was great. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I'm very mean as the chair. Now, as you'll know, anyone who's a regular viewer here, you'll know that these hours were set up in response to the COVID-19 pandemic as a means of giving midwives, student midwives, doulas, maternity care support workers, aspiring midwives. I know we have quite a few people who fit into that category, and also other professionals who want to know more about maternity care, is to give them an opportunity to have lots of information, to have a connection, and to have some CPD, continuing professional development, over that period of time when it was so difficult because people were so pressed at work. They didn't have the time to maybe read in-depth journals or certainly weren't, our ability to go to face-to-face conferences and festivals actually had to come to a stop anyway with the lockdown. So this was a way of just getting our connections going. And it's been a fantastic resource because, as many of you will know, every one of these sessions is recorded. So we have to hope our hair and our lipstick's looking okay. And that's because it's kept for a long time, so that if you miss any bits of this, or you think, oh, I need a friend of mine to see this session, it's all available through Matflix. Fantastic for your CPD, fantastic if you've got an assignment that you've got to work on, so that's for you students. And also for those of you who are looking at revalidation and you need to sort of just update yourselves, this is perfect, and they're all accessible free. If you want to get little packages, there are also ways of getting it packaged for a small fee as well, so that's really useful. So check out Matflix maybe after today, or maybe at the end of the day. Now, just a little bit about what's happening in the world at the moment. With the vaccinations are going apace. I can't believe how fantastic our NHS is, how many vaccinations are going out to people, and we're really even hitting the younger people now. Fantastic. We're still in a pandemic, obviously, and there are still travel restrictions. There's still the masks, there's the social distancing. And we want to send some love and thanks to all our NHS workers and supporters, and to everyone in the maternity services who are still working so hard, because even if one bit of the NHS is busy, it has a sort of fallback on all of the bits. So we know that, and we want to say a big thank you to everyone, and also love and support to people who are going through COVID at the moment, patients, families and friends. So love and support to you. I also want to say, now on the news, a quick happy birthday to Jenny Clark, Jenny the midwife, a good tweeter, who is known to you viewers, I know, because she's done a couple of sessions on the hour. Just to remind you that the NICE induction guidelines, and that's been in the news because there's a really good paper from Hannah Darlin in Australia, which you might want to read before you make any response to the guidelines, that it closes on 6th of July, and the link is in the resources that are available online now. And in relation to other things that are going on, Monday was Home Birth Day. The ICM, International Confederation of Midwives Congress, is still underway, so still some really good things going on there. And there's also a new Maternity and Midwifery Hub, which is got full of lots of information, legislation, all sorts of things. Do check that out. That's available. There's quite a quick link on the Maternity and Midwifery Forum situation, Facebook, whatever. Now, on a sad note, and some of you will know about this, I'm sad to report the death of Dr. Marie Enkin, who many of you will have heard of as one of the authors of the Effective Care in Pregnancy and Childbirth. Everyone knew it as the ECPC, and he was a real friend to midwives and midwifery, and a real trailblazer with that, and he died sadly this week. So rest in peace, Murray. When you see the images of him, he looks such a wonderful person, and he did some wonderful work. Also, there's a new report from the Health and Social Care Committee all about workforce burnout in the NHS and social care. And some of you might be feeling a bit of that. So you might not want to read the whole report, but there are recommendations which you might want to have a look at. And again, the link is on the resources page, and we maybe get someone to talk about some of the recommendations and some of the evidence that went into that report. This is very interesting. So do have a look at that for the links. Oh, I feel as though I've been racing along with that, but I'm very keen to give Trudy and Cheryl as much possible time for their session this evening. So I am jumping and skipping a little bit, because tonight we're going to be looking at the care and support of women who have disabilities, how we can really make sure they get the care and the support they need during pregnancy and afterwards in their early parenting and parenting experience. And we're going to an innovative and award-winning scheme with our wonderful double act, Trudy Williams, who is a maternal medicine specialist midwife, who's passionate about equalities and a real tweeter and designer, and thought about this service, I think back in 2016, unless I'm much mistook. And Cheryl Edwards, who's a principal occupational therapist. They're both from St George's Hospital, and they've both been working with clinics. Well, I'm not going to go into all the things they do because they're going to tell us all about it. So welcome to Trudy and Cheryl, and the screen is now yours.
Thanks, Sue. Thanks very much. Right, just bear with me for a moment whilst I share my screen. Great. So as Sue eloquently said in her introduction, the presentation's around disability or additional needs, pregnancy, birth and parenting. There's some details at the bottom of the slide there of Cheryl and I, our Twitter and email addresses. Right, I'm can't move my slide on, so I'm wondering if it's me sharing.
Try just tapping again to return, because it sometimes takes a little moment.
No.
Tapping on the...
Tell you what, let me go back into stop share and go back into it again. Bear with me.
There's something in the air. I know there was a big problem with the internet yesterday, wasn't there? I'm hoping it hasn't. It's not.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, we're there. Yay. Okay. So how we started. So I've been a midwife since 2002. Before that, I was a nurse. And in my experience as a midwife, I have come across, not commonly, but ladies who have asked questions that have made me think outside of the box, and where there aren't any existing service provision for. So for instance, when I started in the maternal medicine team, and we have a joint neurology clinic, one of the ladies who came, who'd had a stroke, had a good discussion with the doctors, and when she left, she said to me, "Oh, I just wanted to ask you, because I can't use my left arm, how do you think I'm going to be able to carry and feed my baby?" I did the best I could, going through various things, and also with the infant feeding specialist. It wasn't quite enough. I realised there was a gap, needed to do better. Another lady asked me how she was going to push her pushchair, which uses a white stick for a visual impairment. Couldn't quite come up with any useful solutions there, really. Another lady has POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and with certain triggers, you can feel very dizzy and faint, and those ladies really do have to adapt certain things to their life. And that lady was worried about how she might manage with the baby with her POTS symptoms. And in a postnatal visit, I'd never met a lady before, and I went to see her in her first floor flat with no lift. She was a lone parent, and she had cerebral palsy and was using a walking aid. And she had a small toddler, 2 years old, and a baby. And she said to me, I haven't got any help, and I don't really know how I'm going to get out of my flat. And she didn't have any food, she didn't have any shopping. So clearly there was a big piece of work that was needed at that point, and it really galvanized me into action, because I thought, actually, we've had a whole pregnancy to plan for this lady, and here we are in the postnatal period putting in some emergency care. So with increasing awareness of a maternity gap for women with additional needs, I approached my super friends. And obviously, we've got a great champion and consultant midwife for maternal medicine, Carolyn Romer at St George's, who leads a team that I work in. And we discussed it ongoing, and she supported me every step of the way. And then knowing that I needed something more outside of my scope, I needed therapies. And I knew from my time as a nurse that occupational therapists have a unique set of skills to help people adapt and increase their independence in certain situations. And so I knew from the outset we need an OT, and I'd never heard of an OT working in maternity. So I approached Jeremy Nugent, who was then the therapies lead at St George's. It took me a while to get hold of him and had to be really tenacious to do it, but eventually I jumped on him in his office while I was having lunch and said, "I'm going to pitch this to you, and I really want you to listen." He did, and I asked him to come alongside maternity and provide some OT support. And he asked for volunteers, and Elizabeth Lyle, who's still part of the project but not currently in the country, and Cheryl Edwards came along to scope the service, have a look, see what the needs were, and eventually start a pilot to create a collaborative service between midwifery and occupational therapy. Infant feeding specialist, absolutely every woman coming through our service needs infant feeding, bespoke, tailored, additional input. And Anna Cannon is an incredible infant feeding specialist at St George's. So she came alongside, as did Hannah Wallace, who was working for a local charity at the time, because we realised we needed someone who was a baby wearing sling specialist. So there's a lot to know there, but actually it's quite a key element of enabling some ladies, not suitable for everybody, but some ladies in independence. So Hannah Wallace also joined our group, and so we created our first core group to start a pilot service. We had a look at what St George's offers, and also what the stats were. How many women have disclosed that they have some sort of disability or additional need? And it was very unrepresented. So I knew I was looking after ladies who had additional needs, but it wasn't showing up on their booking questions, and they weren't coming out in the stats. So we knew that we had to do a better job of identifying women and capturing those women in order to give them an enhanced service. Cheryl and Elizabeth did a brilliant job of scoping locally, nationally and internationally, looking for pockets of services with occupational therapy, maternity, to support women with disabilities, and found small pockets. We even found someone as far as New Zealand who was a lecturer lecturing in this area, but nothing ongoing and nothing in the antenatal period, and no collaborative midwifery occupational therapy service, which surprised us. And then we listened to the women, of course, because women shape the service. So the women I was looking after with significant medical conditions were shaping the service with me, because we were trying to problem solve together, and they continue to do that. So we ongoing evaluate through the women. Is it a midwifery issue? Well, yes. There's an estimate. These are estimates. There aren't any specific statistics, but it's estimated that 9.4% of mothers in the UK have a long-standing illness which may cause a disability. And 53,000 parents in England have a learning disability, so an intellectual disability with an IQ less than 70. And the RCM acknowledged that increasingly people with a learning disability, physical impairments and chronic health problems are using maternity services. So there's a legal imperative, of course. So there's plenty of legislation that stipulates that as health providers, we must make reasonable adjustments and equalise access for people with additional needs and disabilities. There's a UN convention, the Equality Act, which underpins many services, a Human Rights Act in 1998, which stipulates that health providers should take all reasonable steps to help you have a family, including giving advice and support before and after your child is born. So these are the things that we base our service on. NHS England, definitely worth a look at this document, Accessible Information and Communication Report, which came out in 2016, which all public social and health services have to comply with, and actually has got a really useful, usable tool that you can use to implement in your service. But it's likely that all services will have had some oversight about that report. Public Health England have got loads of resources for equal access, easy read, etc. And the good practice guideline, if you're looking after any parents with a learning disability, is definitely the guideline to look at, because it's got some really valuable resources in there, and really teaches us as a maternity unit and midwives how to look after parents with learning disabilities. Birthrights, brilliant organisation, have done some great research around disability. Much more work is needed by maternity services to provide high quality, individualised care to all disabled women, ensuring that they're given information they require to make decisions about their care in a way that respects their knowledge about their own body. Because remember, the women are experts in themselves. We scoped the social media, and that really reflected what we had already seen in the research and from the women that we were looking after. So women reaching out to RNIB and Mumsnet, different social media resources, saying, I don't really know how to manage this aspect of my pregnancy or my baby care with this impairment. So reaching out for information elsewhere because they weren't getting the information from their maternity services. We created a pathway. So we originally scoped and did a pilot, and within that we needed to identify the women, and we know that lots of women won't identify as disabled. And we need to be expansive about taking histories. So we need to think about chronic pain, women who are adapting their lives around chronic pain, chronic fatigue, weakness, balance, physical impairment, sensory loss, autism, Asperger's, ADHD, OCD, seizures. So we've started to do a big piece of work about raising awareness, disability, and we created a referral process into my team, and we triage all of the women who we referred. So we usually make a call or whichever accessible information communication portal they use. It might be face-to-face with a BSL interpreter, and we have a chat about what they anticipate they might need from their pregnancy, birth and parenting. And often these women have thought long and hard about it before they got pregnant. And sometimes there's things they haven't necessarily thought about that we talk about, and they highlight to me. From that, I work out what we need to do next. But what we absolutely always do is locate a named midwife or link that lady with a continuity of carer, because all of these ladies will need enhanced input, and a named midwife is invaluable, because knowing a midwife and the midwife knowing you, especially where there are complex issues, really important. So then we make a plan. So I work out who they need to see and when, and what sort of care plan, care pathway is suitable. And for the complex cases, because Cheryl is extremely busy, she runs a very busy service, has been redeployed for COVID, etc., etc. So I'm really discerning about who I refer on to Cheryl. So I use some of my own expertise, but it doesn't come anywhere near, obviously, the skill set that Cheryl has. So I keep the complex cases for Cheryl, and we see the ladies together, or one of my maternal medicine midwife colleagues see the ladies with Cheryl antenatally, usually in the antenatal clinic, because we have space issues at St George's, like most hospitals, in the second trimester. So it gives us time to plan ahead. And Cheryl goes through a detailed assessment and generates a report and an information pack, and may see the ladies a second time, and has done some home visits as well. All ladies will have a bespoke one-to-one infant feeding session, and then we create an individualised plan which incorporates our environment. What barriers does our maternity unit create for people with additional needs? What are their communication needs? Sometimes we have to do very detailed communication plans to ensure we equalise access to that. We look at the supporter. So often the woman's more dependent on a supporter. So we need to work out what we need to do for that person, that +1. And sometimes that person will also have their own needs. And we do it all alongside the woman. So I write it together with her, or Cheryl writes it together with her, or one of my colleagues does, and we agree it and then disseminate it across a unit to ensure that everybody's comfortable. So it's a seamless process going through the maternity unit, and that's supported by our doctors and our midwives and our healthcare assistants. We look at skill mix and staffing needs, equipment, etc. We supported over 100 women and 4 dads since 2017. Some of the cases only require a small amount of input, might be, large print or an adjustment to the environment. But some cases are very, very complex, and Cheryl and I can be in meetings with 12 other professionals of whole variety, social, primary, secondary care, and we work also alongside some charities and Signpost. So just having a quick overview of the different ladies that we see with different disorders. So our leading cases that we see are ladies with neurological disorders. So that includes hemiplegia following a stroke, muscular dystrophy, cerebral palsy, spina bifida. FND is functional neurological disorder. Noonan syndrome, paraplegia, neurofibromatosis, dystonia, weakness, myasthenic syndrome, MS, CVA, strokes, already said, brain tumour. And I haven't included epilepsy in that group, but I see around 30 plus ladies a year who we give seizure adaptive advice to. And then our second leading cases for additional needs are chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and I should have included in their pain, but certainly those ladies need a lot more input. Achondroplasia, which is short stature, ladies with a limb amputation, learning disability, autism and Asperger's, cancers, ladies with hearing impairment. I've got a lady at the moment who's able to speak. Partially sighted ladies, a lady with severe asthma, bariatric and cardiac disorders, MSK, which is musculoskeletal, and postnatal neurology. So we work together with the neurological wards that Cheryl works in for ladies that are readmitted, possibly with an MS relapse, for instance, or a stroke after they've had a baby, to keep the family together. And then over, that's my bit, almost, and over to Cheryl.
Thank you, Trudy. As a non-midwife, I'm just going to thank you very much for inviting me to speak this evening. Very much appreciated. As you and Sue said, been very fortunate to have been part of this project since the beginning, really, and to see it grow and develop. And I have learnt so much from my midwife colleagues, and absolutely take my hat off to the amazing profession that is midwifery. So I want to say that. My background is an occupational therapist. As Trudy said, I work at St George's with her. I have specialised in neurology or neurosciences since 2004. Predominantly work across, my current role, I work across acute neurosciences and neurorehabilitation. So working, St George's has a tertiary neurosurgery, neurosciences centre, as well as a tertiary neuro rehab centre. So we have people referred in for complex neurosurgery interventions and for rehabilitation from across southwest London, Surrey, Sussex, and sometimes parts of Kent and Essex. So it's quite a wide field. Prior to doing this project, we had women through neuro rehab who had a neurological event, a stroke or another event quite soon after having a baby. And actually a lot of the focus of our rehabilitation was around maximising their independence, around their parenting roles, and the beauty of occupational therapy is it's client-centred and thinking about what are their goals, what do they want to achieve through their rehabilitation. And a lot of the time it was focused on being able to care for their child and have that role as a parent. So it needed to be innovative and creative and think about how we could support that. And then through working with Trudy, developing this service and thinking about antenatally how we can support that. And a lot of what we do is signposting and making sure that we're getting the right services and the right setup in place for the ladies for their parenting journey ahead. So what can we support as OTs? So practical physical things such as thinking about one-handed techniques. I've got our baby Dolly here, so I shall show you. I'll try and show you a few things in a minute. Thinking about baby carrying for wheelchair users. So one of the ladies that we had in the clinic had a spinal condition and an amputation, so predominantly moved around on the floor. So she used her upper limbs for her mobility. So then one of the things that we were thinking about is how is she going to safely carry her baby whilst being able to move herself around at home. Thinking about equipment, and when we think about equipment, we talk about regular baby products that are in John Lewis. I was going to say Mother Care, but that's no more, is it? John Lewis and other baby marketing places. So thinking about, buggies and what kind of adaptations they may need to existing pieces of kit that they could get in regular shops, what kind of bespoke adaptations they may need for that, but also thinking about kind of core OT equipment. So thinking about a perching stool that can be height adjustable, that can mean that somebody can sit up at a changing table and be comfortable and well supported to be able to change their baby's nappy or to get their baby dressed. Thinking about being able to for them as their pregnancy develops, thinking about how they're going to be able to get in and out of the bath, is that may create more balance or mobility issues for them. So thinking about a bath board, for example, or some other bathing equipment. So practical kind of strategies that might help there. Quite often, if some of our ladies who come through clinic have had either a head injury or a neurological event, they may have some cognitive impairment. So thinking about what strategies would be best to be able to support them through their further kind of antenatal clinics when they come in for delivery and their postnatal care, and then if there are any other teams or services that we need to refer them into, for example community neuro rehab teams and things that may be able to support them as they make that transition into parenthood. As Trudy's mentioned, about thinking about the environment, thinking about what we might need to get set up for delivery for them, for the ward environment, for their room, but also thinking about at home, and leads on to kind of energy conservation adaptation, thinking about having multiple change stations around the house so you don't need to be carrying baby and nappies and everything around if you have a mobility issue, for example. A key one as a mum, I know that fatigue management is a key issue. when you've had a neurological condition or a brain injury or suffer from chronic fatigue, that is obviously exacerbated. So thinking about strategies and pacing and planning and things that you could put in that would make that a little bit easier. As I said, one of the key things is around making sure that we're signposting and referring mums and dads into the right services. So thinking about the changing needs of the child and the parent. So for example, if it's a new event for the parent, that they may be going through rehabilitation, so they may be recovering, so their needs will change, but equally if it's a degenerative condition that they may deteriorate, so making sure that they're linked in with the right services, and also thinking about the developmental needs of the child and the milestones they'll be hitting. So thinking about that the equipment and the environment and the setup is going to need to change as the child grows, so making sure that longer term they're well supported and linked in with the right services, that they can get the pieces of equipment or the advice and the information at the right time when they're making those transitions. I've learned a lot about play, and using one of the things as an occupational therapist, our core is around activity analysis and looking at daily living tasks and thinking about parenting as an occupation and how we can maximize the independence of our mums and dads to be. And I was seeing a lady on one of our neurosurgical wards who had a 6-month-old baby, and we were the team that was seeing her, they were struggling to get her to engage in assessment. She was quite low in mood, and this is pre-COVID, her baby was able to come onto the ward, and actually what we were able to do was to do a play session on the ward, and we were able to do nursery rhymes, and I won't sing, but we were able to do some of the actions of wind the bobbin up, and actually we were able to use that as a really powerful assessment tool, because we could see that she had bilateral hand use, she could remember the words of the song, she could remember the tune, she knew what was coming next, and there was beautiful interaction between her and her baby. So we could see that cognitively a lot of the things that we thought maybe had been affected were actually intact, and it was maybe more of a mood and her situation of being in hospital and away from her child. So it was around kind of being creative and innovative about how we use those skills. And as I said, around signposting and involving the right services, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. I've put in there perinatal mental health. This is not my area of expertise, and I know that there are amazing occupational therapists out there who do work in this area, and actually through the power of this forum I've actually been able to link with a few, so that's hopefully something that we can join up a little bit more for our service in the future. So one of the key things we think about is the environment. So not only thinking about the antenatal kind of clinic environment when they come in, but also longer term thinking about, you know, where they want to have their baby, the sort of experience that they want to have for delivery, and then practical things. So often after our initial antenatal appointment, we might review them at a later date and see them up on delivery suite, for example, or on the birthing, you know, the birthing pool, birthing suite, that's the word. So thinking about, you know, if they want to use the birth pool, can they do the steps to get into the pool? Have they got sufficient balance to be able to do that? Is there any adaptations that we could provide? So we were able to put like a Reebok step to make some of that a little bit easier for somebody to get in. Do they need a single room with ensuite if mobility is an issue? Thinking about if they have any sensory loss, so in particular a visual impairment or a hearing impairment, thinking how we adapt that tour of the area and limit distractions and noises and sounds. And equally an important part of that is thinking about, for the ladies who have had, for example, a neurological impairment, thinking about sensory overstimulation, sensory overload, and actually coming into a very busy ward environment with lots of noise, lots of light, people coming in and out all the time. It can be very overwhelming for them, which can make them very fatigued, can impact on their cognition and their ability to process information. So thinking about how we set up the environment in terms of lighting, in terms of the you know, sort of limiting distractions, making perhaps one key person as the person that will speak at any one time, thinking about keywords and information so that we can support those kind of cognitive and sensory processing difficulties if they're there. Thinking about how wheelchair accessible the area is or needs to be. And then practical things, thinking about the bed height. So we had a lady with achondroplasia, so even when the regular hospital beds were at their lowest, it was still difficult for her to be able to transfer on and off the bed. So problem solving around that, thinking what practical solutions we could put in to enable her to be able to get onto the bed by herself. Thinking about the cot height. So again, the standard cots that were on the unit were too high for this lady to be able to reach to lift her own baby. So thinking about those kinds of things. Practical equipment on the ward, thinking about transfer aids or a perching stool, for example, things that we would be able to get in place and set up before planned delivery dates so that their mum to be knows that everything is ready and everything is set up for them. Thinking about, you know, if they have a visual impairment and they need an assistance dog, for example, and also the person that's going to come with them and what their needs are, and making sure that they can be with mum and that they're well supported as well. And then more your area than mine, but thinking about the positions for birthing support. And as Trudy said, individualizing these birth considerations, putting them into a plan that the mum to be is happy with, that as a team we can support, and disseminating that plan around the team so everybody is happy and aware of what the plan is and what's going to happen. So thinking about baby care, so as Trudy said, so in our joint appointment, so Trudy does her midwifery specialism, which I do not pretend to do anything to do with that, and we really are guided by the ladies because they are experts. You know, they are living independently, or they are, you know, they have a routine, they have a way of living with whatever impairment that they have, and just it's thinking about how we can make that transition into parenting with them, and what advice or support or equipment or practical suggestions we could make so to maximize that independence. So thinking about practical things, so we'll have a think. We usually get them to talk us through kind of what their home looks like, who they live with, so we can think about practical things around, you know, if going up and down the stairs is tricky at the moment anyway, do we need to organize maybe another rail on the stairs for them? We probably need to have a think about how they're going, if they need to carry that baby up the stairs, how are they going to do that safely? What practical things might we need to put in? We quite often get them to talk us through a kind of typical day, so thinking about what life looks like at the moment, if there's any particular challenges that they're having at the moment, anything that they're worried about, anything that they want to have a look at a bit more in the clinic. And then we have a variety of bits of equipment and kit that we can try out with them in the clinic so they can have a go at things. And we have a variety of the weighted dolls. So they can have a go, they can try it out, and you know, at times they've been able to borrow the dolls as well and take it home and try it out within their own home environment, which has worked really, really well. So practical things, thinking about, we would do a full kind of assessment with them as well. So if it's appropriate, looking at kind of motor function, their power, their range of movement, their sensation, a very kind of brief look at sort of cognition, you know, are they able to attend to what we're talking about? Can they focus? Can they recall what we've been saying? Do we need to write things down? Are there keywords? What works best for them? And then practically thinking about, so how they envisage that they're going to feed the baby. So thinking about, as well as obviously linking them in with the feeding team. You know, we had one lady who had an upper limb amputation, so obviously that would have impact in terms of one-handed changing baby techniques, nappy changing techniques, how they're going to carry baby around. So thinking about the baby wearing, you know, the slings, baby carrying devices. If they are using a wheelchair, do we need to make any adaptations to the wheelchair before delivery? One-arm, one-handed techniques, any baby cues or care. So thinking of those visual or hearing impairments or any learning impairments. And we often do quite a bit of joined up working with our colleagues in the learning disabilities team, but also in the learning disabilities occupational therapy team in the community as well for that longer term care. Changing, so thinking about their dexterity, their hand function, how they're going to wash their baby, get their baby into the bath. Is it going to be difficult for them to bend down to get into a regular bath? Do we need to think about a bath on a bath stand or over the sink bath, or perching stool for them to be able to do that? Maintaining the mother's role and what they want to be able to do independently, and what aspects of the baby care they want to be involved with. And as you've said, around managing fatigue and thinking about those symptoms and practical kind of fatigue management strategies. So what do we look at specifically in a clinic? So lifting and carrying. So we quite often have a tryout with baby Dolly here and carrying baby around, thinking about how we're going to move around indoors, but also thinking about outdoors, and it'd be really practical things about thinking about what buggy is going to be best. So there are different brakes on buggies, so hand brake, foot brake. You can now get buggies that have an auto stop brake on the bar, so when you let go it automatically brakes and locks. So obviously if you have somebody who has dexterity and fine motor difficulties, it's going to be potentially more difficult for them to use a buggy with a hand brake, so we can signpost them to buggies that have a foot brake that they may want to look at on the market. We don't endorse any products. We're very careful. We can't obviously endorse anything, but we can give a variety of things that they may wish to explore and to look at. We look at feeding positions and holding the baby in terms of postural support for the mum to be, and what pillows or support and things they may need, or if they're a wheelchair user, thinking about the wheelchair cushion or any kind of lateral supports or postural support that they may need to support that position. Thinking about nappy changing and cleaning, so one-handed baby techniques. Amazing bits of kit. So the baby is actually in a baby grey that has magnetic poppers, so you can do them with one hand, do them up, and I mean they're a little bit more pricey than regular baby greys out there, but quite a lot of the women that come through our clinic absolutely love these because they can do this very easily and maintain independence with looking after their baby. Thinking about, as I said, how they're going to bathe the baby, and then thinking about sleep and where baby's going to sleep. One of the things quite often is where mums have difficulties with mobility is to, I mean, as a mum, I know that you're up several times a night getting up to feed baby or to settle them, and you know, if you have a mobility difficulty, or you need to put a ankle foot orthosis on before you can safely transfer, all of those things take a lot of time and can be even more fatiguing. So we quite often think about the kind of next to me type cribs where mum doesn't need to do that transfer, but baby can safely sleep next to mum, whilst obviously being very mindful of the risk of cot death and supporting that. And thinking practically about, you know, sometimes it's environment. Thinking, you know, we've had, it feels a little bit like changing rooms sometimes when we're saying, if you push the bed up that way a little bit more, then you'd be able to get this in, you'd be able to have this. So sometimes it's practical advice at home, and I don't often get to do home visits, but where I have been able to go and follow mums up at home, it's been really great to be able to, you know, just kind of practically from an energy conservation or safety point of view, being able to suggest where bits of equipment and things might go to make things a little bit easier. What I should say is on the equipment front, there is very limited products out there on the market specifically for mums to be or parents with physical or sensory impairments, and quite often any of the items that are out there that are specifically made are quite expensive. So often what we're looking at is what products are actually out there already on the market that are easy for people to get, that we could that would meet their needs. But there are also amazing charitable organizations such as Remap and Demand, which can make bespoke adaptations to things. So for example, the lady we had with achondroplasia, trying to find a cot that she could lower the side to be able to reach her baby safely, and they were able to make a platform and things for her to be able to do that. So it's about kind of signposting and getting those services involved timely so that those things are ready for them. I spoke a little bit about this. So these are some of the buggies. So thinking about the handbrake, the foot brake, just practical things like that. And as Trudy said, we do a report that has all of the kind of recommendations and where we're going to refer and the signposting and things in. And then there's a more of a kind of information pack that mum gets too, which has kind of thinking about the specific things we talked about. So feeding and what kind of pillows and equipment might be useful, what kind of buggies they might want to have a look at, thinking about cots and those kinds of things. So, and it's bespoke to them. It's an individualized plan. Fatigue management. So thinking about, as a mum, we know that babies often do their own little thing and they sleep in the day and they're awake at night. And there's the mantra of sleeping when the baby sleeps. For someone who has fatigue and chronic fatigue, that can be really important, but also thinking about using fatigue management principles. So thinking about pacing and planning and prioritizing what you need to do in the day and what you want to do in the day, so that there's a good balance between the two. And considering, I have the 4 Ds, so do, delay, delegate and ditch. What things do I absolutely need to do today? What could I delay? What could I get someone else to do? And what's just not going to happen today? And trying to avoid this boom or bust. So where you feel that you have lots of energy and you overdo things, and then you sort of pay the price later, and then you're feeling worn out and then can't do the things that you maybe want to do or need to do. So practical things around, you know, considering having some help with meals or with housework, considering regular rest breaks in the day, just using those kind of principles of being able to think about what it is that they really want to be involved in with their baby's care, or what other activities they really want to be able to do throughout the day. As I said, a lot of what we do is around signposting and referrals on to other services. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources to be able to follow people up you know, kind of over a longer period of time. So it's about making sure that we're referring them into the right services. And just to give you a bit of a flavour of where we refer people into. So often, for example, social services, occupational therapists who would be able to support with equipment provision at home, longer term sort of adaptations and things, and can follow people up for a longer period of time. Community rehabilitation teams, so that's community neuro rehabilitation, or we've sort of done chronic fatigue services and things. There's a whole host of amazing rehabilitation services that are out there. We've liaised with housing services, the bespoke equipment companies I mentioned, Remap and Demand, the sling specialists. We've referred to our local wheelchair services. So for example, where the wheelchair is no longer meeting their needs or won't meet their needs as their pregnancy grows, or their pressure relieving cushion isn't going to sort of sustain them through pregnancy, referring on for wheelchair services. Working closely with our women's health physio colleagues, so thinking about any pain or malalignment through the pelvis, or mobility issues that may develop through pregnancy. And then also the sort of voluntary sectors. So we have an amazing organisation in Wandsworth called Little Village, which can support with getting a whole host of baby care items. So nappies, clothing, prams, buggies, cots, amazing organisation. And then also specific voluntary sector services, so for example through the MS Society or Different Strokes or Headway, so thinking about signposting through other sort of voluntary sectors that are out there. to you.
And finally, the woman's an expert in herself, so we work in partnership with the women. We ask the women. As you've heard, occupational therapy is invaluable to maternity units, and yeah, we've learned such a lot. And you know, it's not easy to access occupational therapy, so we can be used as a resource to help with ideas of how to set up. Takes extra time. Obviously, we've used loads of our own time in between parenting and full-time work, etc., to do literature reviews, etc. Build it into your existing services. We haven't had any new funding for this. We've bolted it onto the services that we have. It might be useful to identify a disability or enhanced needs champion in your own maternity units. People have got a special interest in it. That's a really good place to start and grow. As I say, don't wait for funding, be innovative. We've applied for loads of different funding and some have been successful, some haven't. It's a legal imperative and a human right. So this isn't something that we can do as a voluntary service. This is something that women have the right to have legally. And women with chronic health problems need midwives. Most of those women are being seen by their doctors, but they really do need to be seen by midwives as well. Name midwives, absolutely crucial. And think about pregnancy, birth and motherhood. So that long-term view is really important. And thanks for listening. And
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for inviting us to speak.
Thank you very much. I'll give a round of applause on behalf of everybody who's watching. That's really, I think what's exciting is that this is a truly integrated system of care. And somebody actually has asked, Jo Daguston has said, she doesn't understand, are we suggesting this sort of skilled individualized service provision isn't available across the UK? Now, I have to say, I'm not sure that it is available across the UK, and I would suspect that you will know that better than I.
Yeah, as Trudy said earlier, there's when we looked at the literature search and we looked nationally and internationally, there were small pockets of services that were providing sort of support for parents to be or in parenting. To name a few, obviously there's local community neuro rehab teams and also the Oxford Centre for Reablement as well, or for enablement. But what we found was that actually what was unique is the antenatal aspect of it, the OT and the midwife working together collaboratively in that clinic to kind of problem solve with the mum to be and thinking about how this is going to look and what advice and things can we put in. And that, to our knowledge, doesn't exist.
Well, we'll see if something comes out with the chat.
Somebody might, yeah, it might be great if there is.
But what comes over is for me it's always fascinating when you've got somebody who's met women who are having problems, who then thinks, hang on, there must be an answer here. Someone actually goes out and starts working something out, and that has resulted in a fantastic service for women and their babies and their families, because it at least, you know, having a disability in itself is such a major thing to have to live with, but to then have a baby and a family that you've got to think about as well, this at least that women have got the preparation and they've been able to be supported, which is fantastic. Now I do have a few, well, I have more, I think I have more comments than questions. Sarah Griffiths, hi Sarah, says, I'm a disabled mum of 3 who's had 3 babies in less than 5 years. Wow, that's hard work. The care I received from the Southwest Acute Hospital in Fermanagh, Northern Ireland was second to none. Great feedback for the midwives in Ireland and OTs, I hope. It was a collaborative care experience where I educated myself alongside the amazing maternity team, and my wishes were fully heard and respected. At a time when I was feeling very vulnerable and anxious, they made me feel confident and empowered. This is a blueprint on how things should be done. Thank you. And that's Brenda. Thank you, Brenda McCabe, who I suspect must be a key person there in that service. So thank you for that, Sarah. That's a lovely bit of feedback.
Yeah, that's really good to hear.
Yeah,
really good to hear that she had a positive experience.
Absolutely. And Sarah Santos says, this is good. This is a question here. Do our speakers think that more of an effort needs to be made to build disability awareness and instruction into the midwifery curriculum for students? Are there any particular resource on this subject that we can access independently? That's quite a big one. Because
the RCM have obviously touched on it,
Yeah.
and there's e-learning available, but I'm not sure it's specifically around disability and pregnancy. I work with our local faculty. To my knowledge, they haven't built it into their curriculum.
It needs to be. It needs to be to meet
Yeah.
the NMC things. I mean, I suppose in some ways when I get that, and I think that's a super question, Sarah, so thank you for that, because that's going to get anyone who's watching this who's a teacher will be thinking, maybe we should actually expand that a little bit, because I think that I can remember, and you might be able to remember this, Trudy, having to wear a mask over your face so you couldn't see, and having to go around the school of nursing, holding on to someone to feel what it was like to be partially or totally unsighted, and you know, some of the things that have been done, like trying out to see what it's like to be in a wheelchair, for example. It's always good for students to feel that, and midwives and other practitioners, because you know, it's when you are, you know, less able to do something in that way, it makes you think about how can I help other people in that way. So that might be a thing for teachers and students to think about, maybe. And I can see brains ticking at the moment here.
I was going to just add, Sue, that we have had student midwives who've joined us in clinic and been part of and observed that, and I think student OTs as well.
Fabulous.
And we on the OT curriculum, it isn't on that around parenting specifically as an occupation, but we do obviously look at client-centeredness and thinking about maximizing independence. So it is that activity analysis and developing those skills. But we have the university on site, which has both midwifery school and occupational therapy school now, so trying to work a little bit more collaboratively with them as well.
I think this is going to be growing. I think it's fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, we've got another comment from Sarah Griffiths. Taking time to ensure that feeding is safe, comfortable and sustainable is one of the single most important things for me. Feeding my baby was the one thing only I could do. That's lovely. It was so empowering. Had I not been properly encouraged and supported, my experience would have been so different. That's fabulous. Thank you, Sarah. That's really important for us to know. And Jacqueline Richards says, her question is my baby affected by my condition? Is often a common question I find. I think that's a comment rather than a question, I think.
Yeah. So obviously every woman is an individual and comes with her expertise in her condition and questions and some concerns. So it's a holistic perspective, and obviously it's not just us. We work within an MDT as well, so we'll seek to find as many answers as we can.
I think you've illustrated the integrated nature of your service. Anyway, okay, Hannah Huet says, this webinar was amazing.
Thanks.
And no, I don't believe it's readily available in the UK. I'm looking over, audience, at my other screen. I'm not looking away from you. Well, I am to look at the other screen. I don't believe it's readily available in the UK, and a very big interest of mine. So for you to suggest not waiting for funding, identifying, becoming a champion is so important. Thank you for this amazing knowledge. Whoa.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you, Hannah. And I'm sure that both Trudy and Cheryl will be very happy to get in contact, or if you get in contact, they'll be very happy to assist you and support you. Oh, P.S. I should add I'm a first-year student, and I don't know whether this will be integrated into our learning. I really hope it is. Well, students can influence what goes into a program, let me tell you. So well done, Hannah. You're going to be a fantastic midwife. Okay, another comment. Inga Heyman, I'm really keen to draw in these ideas for our IPL, that's interprofessional learning programme at Edinburgh Napier University. Thank you for your wonderful presentation and allowing a mental health nurse to be in the webinar. Excellent. Okay, that's fantastic. I mean, I just had one query about the sort of impact of COVID-19 on your service over the last year. Has that had a difficult? And I mean, apart from presumably you might have women who've got long COVID who then get pregnant.
Well, for midwife, yeah, and you're right. The maternal medicine team at St George's look after the ladies with long COVID. So yeah, and breathlessness, fatigue. Certainly build into this additional need service. St George's Maternity has been business as usual. We haven't been redeployed. Fortunately, we've been able to continue the service and the quality of care, albeit with some contingency plans. Cheryl service, however, has been different, but been so innovative of how to still support maternity. I mean, really incredible under the most difficult and challenging circumstances. So I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, so within occupational therapy, my day job, as it were, is obviously inpatient ward based. So obviously our roles changed quite a bit over the last sort of 14, 15 months. And so we found ourselves working on COVID wards or in COVID ICU. So what we've been able to do is to do some virtual clinics. So seeing ladies via Zoom or via MS Teams, doing sort of follow-up phone calls. And through that, we've been able to actually develop a lot more of our resources. So thinking about the information packs that we've been able to develop and to send out to people, linking a bit more sort of through email and things so that we can have a bit more dialogue with them. And then as restrictions have eased and things have improved in the hospitals, then being able to resume the face-to-face clinics and some of the kind of home visit things as well. So it was definitely challenging, and it's made us think and be even more innovative than we've had to be. But a lot of the things actually are positives, and the information packs that we've developed we're going to keep because we think that they're really valuable for the ladies as a resource going forward.
And just to add to that, obviously, parts of the plan are often for the +1, the supporter, to be with the woman during that process, being inpatient, and visiting's been restricted, and partners haven't been allowed to stay, etc. But we have made exceptions for women with additional needs. So we work with our team. Everyone's on board. It's a brilliant midwifery body at St George's who are supportive and understand the additional needs and how that exception needs to be made. And we're careful, obviously, COVID testing, partners not moving around the areas. So we put in a COVID plan as well as other plans.
Fabulous. I think this is a perfect way, and sadly, to come to an end because the hour is finished. And I know the audience have really enjoyed this because of all the feedback coming back. There's a few things coming back in, but we do need to finish, I'm afraid, sadly. So thank you so much to Cheryl and Trudy for spending an hour with us and sharing their most innovative and such a lovely example of working. The benefits have been fantastic to listen to you and talk to you. So thank you so much for making the time to be.
One of the benefits, I think, of a platform like this is that if you are busy clinically, or if you can't watch or listen or engage real time, you can do this at other times. So that is fabulous for such a time as this. So delighted to be with you all, albeit virtually on the screen. My name is Jacqueline Dunkley-Bent. I'm the Chief Midwifery Officer.
And good morning to everyone. Welcome indeed to this Scottish Midwifery Online Festival. And good morning and welcome to the Maternity and Midwifery London Online Festival.
Good morning and welcome to the second annual Maternity and Midwifery Festival.
What 2020 has shown us is that there's a real need for vigilance, that women's rights are not yet really embedded in our maternity system, and that they can be easily eroded.
My argument is that the solution is health optimization. Prevention is far better than cure.
And I think there is a real risk that services that are lost or reduced during the time of COVID are not restored.
The hard truth is there is a lot of racism there. It's not enough to be non-racist, swimming in a pool of racism. You have to be anti-racist, actively working against racism. And I say that because when we treat the least well, everybody benefits.
And if I had a take-home message looking at my career and where I've been in my career, my take-home message would be grab it every opportunity you can. It's not a rehearsal. Know your limitations, because jam too thinly spread is tasteless. Enjoy it all and let nobody steal your sparkle.
And I hope that you can take valuable insights from today. And if you're listening tonight, or if you're listening next week or next month, take valuable insights from the speakers from today and share the word, share the positive messages with your colleagues, because in these dark times, in these challenging times, everybody needs a green shoot and a pearl of wisdom. Thank you very much. And we are in this together. We stand united together.